actually read or hear it themselves doesn't mean to say it doesn't do damage to them and their reputation.
Okay, sorry to interrupt, but this word trolling is now bandied about a lot, and I don't know all the details of what Brenda Leyland said, so as you say, we can park that for a future time, and it's a very unfortunate story. But trolling now can just mean somebody disagrees with you online. This is what tends to happen. Somebody says something, they get disagreed with, and then someone says, oh no, there's a troll.
That certainly happens. I've had plenty on my Twitter feed, and I just simply block them. But they're not saying things which are necessarily damaging to my reputation.
Well, are they even trolling
my life? Well, people can say pretty nasty things, personal things, directly to you, can't they?
Right. I'm asking you what your view is.
Well, yeah, but I think that's trolling. That's why I would block them. But the wider issue for the McCanns, I think, is that they have had a tragic loss in their own lives, and people saying really unpleasant things about them online continue to maintain the idea that somehow they're responsible for their child's death, which is clearly not true.
They do seem to excite levels of hatred, Jim Gamble, among some people.
Yes, they do, and some of it is irrational. People are entitled to express opinions, even if we find those opinions offensive. So first of all, someone coming on and saying, I hate you, you're this, you're that, you're the other. Actually, to a degree, you accept that, and that is people's right to express an opinion, so you can choose not to engage them or block them. But when you talk about trolling, you're talking about a sustained and in my experience, irrational attack that goes beyond stating your opinion to vile threats, menacing behaviour, to the gang and mob mentality that no wonder the McCanns avoid Twitter. The key issue here is their children, Sean and Emily, are growing up in a digital age. They won't be able to avoid if they're going to grow and utilise all the opportunities in life without engaging. And some of the things that are said are so abhorrent, I couldn't even repeat them on your show. It's about decency. And of course, people have your opinion, say what you want. I've blocked a number of people this morning who are just simply being ridiculous. But when you gang together, when you focus on an individual or individuals, when you do something which you should know and would cause them distress, then you're guilty of criminal harassment. The law needs to deal with that. And I think had the police better engaged at an earlier stage with more of these people, and there are some terrible, terrible people online. We've seen cases where politicians and sports personalities have been abused. But where ordinary people are being abused, the police need to show that they can deliver a level of protection which they currently don't. So there is no deterrence, and that simply makes this worse.
OK, let's go to Julie Mayer, reporter from BBC Radio Leicester, who's in the village of Burton Overy, where Brenda Leyland lived. And the police, I gather, saying her death is not being treated as suspicious, Julie.
That's right, yes. They said that they were called at 1:42 p.m. on Saturday, the 4th of October, to report of a body of a woman in a hotel room in Smiths Bay, Grove Park in Enderby, Leicester. And officers have attended the scene there, and a file is being prepared for the coroner. Identification of the deceased is a matter for the coroner, and the death is not being treated as suspicious.
And what do we know of what Brenda Leyland did online?
Well, this is a woman who would have been known by the residents of Burton Overy, who was, to all intents and purposes, a quiet woman, kept herself to herself. She was identified as one of the trolls posting hate messages aimed at the McCanns, whose daughter disappeared during a family holiday to Portugal in 2007. This incident came just days after Mrs. Leyland was doorstepped by Sky News reporter Martin Brunt.
So when you say this incident, you mean her death?
The death, yes,
right.
The incident, her death. This was just days after that she was doorstepped, and she was accused by Martin Brunt as being one of the people behind an online campaign against the couple. And it's here in the village where she was tracked down to her home and confronted about her online activity. And when she was asked why she was using her Twitter account to attack the couple who live with their younger children, she said, "I'm entitled to do that." And it was days later that she was reported to have fled her home.
What's the reaction in the village, Julie?
Well, as you can imagine, massive shock. There's an air of sadness here this morning about the village, and many of the residents are subdued. They shake their head in disbelief at the news of her death, especially those that know her. I spoke to a few of the residents who say that she was your average middle-class housewife. She was artistically talented, an avid gardener, extremely well-dressed, quite trendy, and she spent a lot of the time in America visiting her son. But when she was actually at home, she was a quiet sort of person, wasn't really an activist within the village, and not really very outgoing. So you can imagine why they were shocked. They absolutely had no idea that she was taking part in a hate campaign.
Right, and I read out one of the tweets she apparently sent saying that McCanns must suffer for the rest of their miserable lives. Was there much else? Because it's very hard to find it now that her account has been taken down.
Well, I'm afraid I can't comment on that. I'm not sure about that. I know that there were other messages on the message boards that were similar, but I have no idea as to how many messages there were and the nature of those messages.
Right, okay, thank you very much, Julie Mayer, reporter from BBC Radio Leicester. Does really get to the heart of it, what exactly this woman, I was going to say this poor lady, but whatever, she seems to have taken her own life after being exposed as having trolled the McCanns. But we're not quite clear on what exactly she said in those messages, so we don't really know what she said. But she defended it when she was questioned outside her house by Sky News. Terrible story, the whole thing.
Because you know I'm all about that bass, no trouble. About that bass, no trouble.
In 10 minutes or so, we are talking about choking. You may have had an experience of that. 0500 288 291. Sarah Jarvis, the doctor, coming in, and Richard Madeley, who had this happen to him in a restaurant. Extraordinary. And then it is what makes us human after 1 o'clock as well. Meanwhile, we're talking about the apparent suicide of a woman who is described as having trolled the McCanns. Let me read out some of the messages that she sent or were sent from her account. Sweepy Face, it was called. Dear McCanns, you can move to France anywhere, but social media is everywhere. Our memories are long. Maddie deserves it, she said to them. She said to Kate and Jerry, you will be hated by millions for the rest of your miserable, evil, conniving lives. Have a nice day. This is the woman who apparently committed suicide. She was exposed. Lord Sugar then tweeted, Brenda Leyland, if she took her own life by pressure from the media, there may be a legal case against the media for incitement to commit suicide. So, who are your sympathies with, or is this just one of these dreadful stories? Anonymous caller has just been in touch and says, my sons went to school with Brenda's children. She's not 100% well. Be careful what you say about her. It's not fair to criticise the mentally unwell. And that's quite an important rider if somebody is in their own private hell and they're exposed on TV like that. Maybe that tips them over the edge. Marcus Naylor from Lytham, Lancashire, emails, I've got my own thoughts and views regarding the McCanns, but in this case the media are damned if they do and damned if they don't. The subject of trolling has been at the forefront of the media. Sky has just exposed somebody who is happy to hide behind Twitter. Are the media not now expected to report on this for fear of people taking their life? I guess people need to be, at least operate under their own name online. That would be a start. Dave King from Digitalis, online reputation management company, on the phone. What do you think is the way of dealing with these so-called trolls?
Hello, Jeremy. Well, I think, first of all, it's worth saying it's obviously incredibly sad what's happened to Brenda Leyland. And I think it's important to say that none of the psychology here is new. You know, there's clearly a lot of lonely, sad, bitter people out there. The difference is today that they have an outlet, and people think that they can operate anonymously. The reality is, though, Jeremy, that in most cases, people aren't operating with anonymity, and the authorities have the ability to track these people down. And you know, people need to think very carefully about what they write online, with everything that they write online, because harassment is a criminal offence and libel is an actionable tort, and people can take action when things are written about.
People don't generally like to necessarily put their own real profile out there. There may be good reasons, may there not, why somebody wants to go around the internet with a false name.
I think there are very good reasons people will use false names and will set up Twitter handles that don't use their correct name and what have you. The reality is, though, that with the exception of a very small number of cases, people think they're operating anonymously, but in reality they can be tracked down. Now, there are clever ways that, at Digitalis, a technology company, we can operate anonymously. We can do very clever things online. The reality is that most people in their bedrooms, and most bullies in their bedrooms likewise, don't have access to the kind of technology that allows them to truly be anonymous, and therefore we can find them, we can work with the authorities to find them, and therefore action can be taken. What that action is depends on is case by case, of course.
Thank you very much, Dave King from Digitalis. Dave Hazel is in Walmley, Sutton Coldfield, says, I've got no real sympathy with this woman, Brenda. She thought she could spout all kinds of nasty things. She thought she could hide behind the internet and remain anonymous, and that is the coward's way. If you don't have the moral courage to say things in the open, don't say them. More to come.
Simon Mayo, The Confessions, The Guests, The Book Club.
So it's the Radio 2 Book Club, which we do every fortnight. Here's Robert Harris with An Officer and a Spy. I'm delighted to say we're going to be talking 007.
The book takes place over 5 days in November 1920.
What I in the book explain as Ove is very much a man of black and white, and she is all his color.
Karen in Leeds. This is the first novel I've read by Belinda Bauer, but it will definitely not be the last. Tell the absolutely love Worth Dying For. Highlight of the year for me. He's an incredible writer.
Simon Mayo at Drive Time, home to the Radio 2 Book Club.
And join us for the next chapter when we're live from the Cheltenham Literature Festival.
The Radio 2 Book Club with Simon Mayo.
Today from 5 on BBC Radio 2.
That book, Officer and a Spy, I read over the summer by Robert Harris. I loved it so much, about the Dreyfus affair in France. Joy Morris in Heswall has texted us and says, everyone has the right to an opinion on anything and anyone, but to air them anonymously with the intention of causing hurt is cowardly and disgraceful. If you feel strongly about something, you put your name to it. John Baldock in Birmingham says, like lots of people, it is awful this woman, Brenda, committed suicide, but I've looked at some of her tweets and they're vile. I strongly suspect if she hadn't been able to post anonymously, she wouldn't have made those comments. She wouldn't then have found herself in a position where she felt the need to take her own life. Let's see, we've got Al on the phone. Hi, Al.
Hi.
And you had somebody troll you?
Yeah, it was actually somebody I knew. I had met them online. My husband and I had met them online, and we had been friends with them. And they'd come to stay with us, and everything had seemed fine. But when they went back home, they lived quite away from us, and we didn't actually know his home address. The next day, he had attacked me on Facebook, Twitter, emails, and YouTube, saying all kinds of very personal things, all kinds of nasty lies about me.
How did he attack you on YouTube? I've never seen that.
We had some YouTube videos on there.
Oh, right.
Just kind of pets and things like that, and he'd put comments on them about, I was an alcoholic and I had mental health issues and this and that and the other thing.
Dear me.
Which were pretty much what he had, but he decided to tell everybody I did. So he was actually terrified of my husband, so he didn't attack my husband, he attacked me.
So you're sitting looking at this stuff, it's very personal, understandably you can't ignore it, which is what people say, oh, why don't you ignore it, but it's out there.
How do you ignore that?
Well, so do you not start to think, wait a minute, who is this, or is there just no way of knowing?
Well, I knew who it was, in my case, but there was literally no way of that. Even though I knew who it was, I couldn't link it to him. I knew who it was, but I couldn't link it to him. There was nothing I could do but delete, block. I took myself off Facebook and off of everything, and I haven't been back on since, and this was a couple of years ago.
And how bad did it get for you?
I took a paracetamol overdose and ended up in A&E.
And did this guy ever stop?
Well, once I had nothing for him to contact me with, my husband actually did phone him up and threatened him in the end. He said, you ever put anything on there about my wife again, I will find you.
That worked, did it? That's kind of that's the analogue way of dealing with it.
Yeah, the analogue way of dealing with it. But unfortunately, for a lot of people who are trolled, they don't have that option.
Do you think people should not be allowed to go online under a false name? Because that would sort the trolls out. You
should not be able to have a false name. If you are registering with a site, you should have your name and address, and it should be, what's the word? You should be able to confirm it. When you've got a PayPal address, how you have to get your bank statement and put a little code in that you've got on your bank statement. PayPal does it to confirm who you are. So should Facebook and Twitter.
Thanks, Al.